The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat.
You're listening to Truth Talk.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
With Paul Webster and Chance George.
First year of global governance with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis.
President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it.
Nope, no weapons over there.
People who have been yelling, oh, the UN's going to take over global
Conspiracy
government.
theorists.
They've been crazy, but now they're right.
Yeah. Maybe under here.
But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that.
Hello and welcome to the Media Broadcasting Center. We are live for another edition of Truth Talk. My name is Chance George. Paul Webster won't be here today, but we are joined by a very special guest on this Thursday, July 31st. But Max Igan will be joining us from Australia. He is already middle of Friday afternoon, so without any further ado, let's bring up Max. We are so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us here at the Media Center. How are you doing today, Max?
Pleasure to be here, brother. Thank you for having me on. It's good to be able to get the word out to people. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so.
Well, I would have liked to been able to get you up on the show and to talk about all your wonderful work, a lot of your research, your shows, and all the great things that you're doing with all the but it appears that there's a little bit more of a serious issue going on, and it has energized you. I've watched a lot of the podcasts going out there, and it seems like you're a lot more fired up than usual, and it's probably because of this massive attack and genocide that is going on in Gaza right now. So, as that's probably going to be the main topic of today, we maybe break into how you're personally connected to this and what it is exactly that's going on right now.
Well, I'm connected to it as much as I know people there. I mean, there are a lot of other people far more connected to it than I am, but it's given it a real personal feel to me. I mean, there's been a lot of massacres that have happened in the world in a lot of different occasions, but I've never really had one come and knock on my door the way this one has. So it's been personal for me in that way. But what's going on there is massive ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. I mean, it is genocide. This isn't a war. This is a genocide against the civilian population. And I called it right when it started. I said, this is genocide. You don't take 60,000 troops and a column of tanks in the Gaza Strip to clean out a few tunnels. If you're taking that much force in there, you're going in there to kill as many people as you can. And that's really what's been going on there. And that's what I've been trying to help the world notice. And they are finally starting to notice now. But we've been making a lot of noise. I've tried to start a human shield operation to take human shields in there to stop this happening. But they kind of set it up so you can't get in anyway. And they're shooting human shields anyway. Anybody who does go in, they're just shooting you. But they've kind of destabilised the entire region around Gaza. They've destabilised the entire Arab world, Libya, everywhere, Egypt, everywhere. So you can't actually get in. Even if you did have a human shield operation, you can't get in there. So the people that I've got signed up to Gaza Shield are kind of there waiting, trying to figure out an action plan, what we can do. At this stage, we have to wait till there's some sort of a ceasefire, and when there is, we can go straight in there as long as we can get in through Egypt. At the moment, though, what people can do if they are concerned about Gaza is they can contact the local Egyptian embassy or consulate and demand that the Egyptian government open Rafah crossing. Because they're keeping the border closed. They're allowing like 9 people a day to come out over Rafah border to get medical assistance. I mean, what is this? Where do they get this figure from? 9 people a day in the middle of this war zone. So we've got to put pressure on Egypt, flood them with phone calls, flood them with emails, flood them with letters. If you're in a city and you have an Egyptian consulate in your country, go to the consulate and speak to the people there. you demand that Rafah border be open so that we can get humanitarian aid in there and just deluge them. Radio talk shows, Facebook, TV stations, media outlets, newspapers, politicians, call everybody and make as much noise as you can to put pressure on Egypt to open Rafah border. That will at least put a lot of public pressure on Egypt, and it will highlight the fact that this country is complicit in war crimes, and it is keeping this border closed and is preventing humanitarian aid from getting in. If we can do that, if we can somehow get them to open Rafah border, and we can get a large enough international contingent to arrive there at Rafah, then we can start making a difference. But we've got to get on the case and do it quickly, because every day that we don't is a disaster for the people in Gaza. At the moment, they're running out of water, they're running out of food, they're running out of everything. There are 1.8 million people in there. They've got a wall around them, and I suspect that Israel does not want to see any survivors from Gaza Strip. And so, they're depending on us. So we're really all that they've got to depend on. And this issue is far more important than people believe. It has significance for all of our countries. It has significance for every government that supports this. Then this has significance for the people in that country, because this is blatant ethnic cleansing, and our governments are sitting by and watching it happen. And the people have been outraged. We've been calling it ever since it started. But the governments are still letting it happen. So we have to continue to make noise about this and see that it does affect us all. It isn't just an attack against Palestine, it's an attack against all of humanity.
It's quite frankly unbelievable what's going on there, and when I ask people just in my local area, and I'm from Canada, Ontario, very close to Toronto, just about, what do you know about Gaza, and they almost don't even have a clue what it is or where it is or how small of an area this is, and how they're basically surrounded by water and a brick wall. They're in a prison zone. This isn't a nice getaway in the desert. This is a prison that they're being captive in, and for years they've had their land stolen, their houses taken away, and just complete terrorism. And it's at the hands of the Israeli Zionists, who are basically real life terrorists, and it's appalling that people like my own government is not only condoning it and saying it's fine, but they're supporting them. The U.S. government is paying them billions and trillions of dollars to fund their military. It's appalling what's going on. It almost makes me ashamed to be a Canadian citizen that my government is openly, there's advertisements right now on our Canadian TV to support Israel. It's unbelievable what's happening.
It is, and it's blatant land theft is what it has been ever since 1948, ever since the State of Israel was formed. And what Israel has done is basically steal the rest of Palestine since 1948, but they've rewritten history in order to do it. They're presenting the concept now that there never was a Palestine. These are just Arabs that are squatting on their land. Palestine was just the name of the area of land, but it was controlled by England, and nobody really lived there. There weren't any Palestinians. These are just Arabs. These are Jordanians. These are just random Arabs, rabble from the area that all kind of merged on this piece of land and started living there, but they weren't actually Palestinians. It's this whole false history that they've created, and they're presenting it to the world, and they've got every argument under the sun to back up what they're saying, because they've written all these books to back up what they're saying. It's incredible, this whole system of programming has been put in place. But essentially what you've got in Gaza Strip is the last section of Palestine that is free, really. And I mean, how free is it? It's got a wall around it. It's an open-air prison. But these people are not, they won't bow to Israel. They won't do everything Israel says and say Israel says they're terrorists living on their land. That's the way it goes. But if you look at World War II and you look at the what happened in Poland when the Nazis invaded Poland, they got the Jewish quarter in Poland, in Warsaw, that's the city of Warsaw, and rather than deal with the Jewish quarter, the Nazis simply put a barbed wire fence around the Jewish quarter. They cut them off from everything, the most basic necessities of life. They turned the whole place into a hideous ghetto where people were, it was rife with disease, there was no water, it was terrible, terrible place to be. And when the people in the Warsaw ghetto finally rebelled and tried to fight back against their terrible Nazi oppressors, the Nazis called them terrorists and exterminated them. And what you've got in Gaza Strip is an exact parallel of the Warsaw Ghetto that the Nazis did to the Jews. Here you have the Israelis doing this to the Palestinian people. They've squashed them down into this last little corner of the country, and then they've built a huge wall around them, and they've cut them off from the most basic necessities of life. 1.8 million people, over 900,000 children, kept in this state. They're allowed one truckload of supplies a day. That includes bottled water and all of the things that they have. That is all they're allowed in once a day, one truckload from Israel. That's the only supplies they're allowed to have. And they've been living in this state for 7 years, and they've got to a point where life is virtually impossible. The sewage is overflowing into the streets. Israel won't allow them parts to fix the sewage plant. It won't allow them water. It won't allow them to use the sea to fish. They're not allowed to have the ocean. They're not allowed to have anything at all. They're just kept in this prison. And they're saying, well, this is because you voted for Hamas and we don't like Hamas. So we're going to lock you in this collective prison, collective punishment for the entire country until you get rid of Hamas. But there's nothing that people can do to get rid of Hamas. They're the ones with all the guns. This is a civilian population, mainly children. Women and children make up the bulk of the population in Gaza. And most of the men who do have any arms are part of Hamas. So there's no way for the people to get rid of Hamas. As soon as Hamas were elected to office, they cancelled any future elections. So that's the end of that. And now we're here to stay, and there's nothing anybody can do about it because you can't get out to get any help because Israel's put a wall around the country. So the civilians in Gaza are the victims, and it is essentially an exact parallel of the Warsaw Ghetto. It would appear that the people who are running Israel really didn't learn anything from the lessons of World War II because they're doing the same thing to the Palestinian people, but they're actually doing it to a lot more people than what was done in Warsaw. So not only is it parallel, it's actually worse. Yeah, and that's really what the situation is in Gaza. See, a lot of people think this is two countries. They think Israel and Palestine are fighting against each other again. They don't realise that Israel and Palestine is actually the same country.
That's why.
1948. It was divided up in 1948, and the Israelis, the Jews, were given the largest section of it, and all they've done since 1948 is steal the rest of it. And the world has not only watched on, but they've supplied Israel with the arms and weapons and support that they've managed to do so.
Well, that's why I made sure to include on our banners that are rotating on the screen that famous 4-picture map of the Palestine-Israel map, where it shows the 1947, then after the United Nations agreement, which is kind of odd that United Nations gets to give someone's land away that's not even theirs, and then it shows, all the way up to just 2000, and the map doesn't include what's happening now, and it's even less, and there's people that have worked their whole lives that have had their houses bulldozed, and now there's Israeli subdivisions where their homes stood, and the Israelis claim this right to return, from 1500 years ago from their great ancestors. But what about the people's right to return to their actual homes that they used to live in, that they've been bulldozed out of and murdered? Now, you had mentioned Hamas. Now, I'm not claiming to be a giant expert, but is it true that I've seen such people as the likes of Ron Paul even admit that Hamas was actually not founded by, but empowered and funded and kind of given a little bit more advancement by Israel itself in the 70s. Is that correct?
Absolutely. They did that because they wanted to get rid of Yasser Arafat.
And the fatwa.
Yasser Arafat's government, which was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. This was the power in Palestine for a long, long time. And Yasser Arafat was a consistent voice for peace in the Middle East. He was, in fact, the only consistent voice for peace in the entire Middle East. But he was painted as a terrorist. And he was a thorn in the side of Israel because he wouldn't bow down to Israel. They just wanted to get rid of him. The people wouldn't get rid of him. They wouldn't vote him out because he was their leader. And he was a just and a wise man. So they were very happy with him being there. And if he had just been assassinated, then very likely his brother or a member of his family would have taken his place. And they are also very good people, and also very moderate and very great advocates for peace. And this is not what Israel wants. Israel needs conflict. The only way Israel can get to steal the rest of Palestine is by screaming at victim all the time and having to go and invade these people just to keep itself safe. This is the way it always paints itself. And this is the way it's painted with Gaza. There's a constant rockets that come over from Gaza. I mean, you've got to wonder who benefits from this. It certainly isn't the people in Gaza. But Israel gets the excuse it needs to go and do what it's doing now because it's under constant rocket attack, even though the rockets don't do anything. They just look impressive. They leave smoke trails in the sky. They just look impressive. They don't really do anything. So what happened was they couldn't get rid of the PLO, they couldn't get rid of Arafat, so they needed to create a democratic system. They tried to paint Arafat as being a brutal dictator and a terrorist, and if you're not a terrorist, well, show us. We'll give you another party. Let there be two parties for people to vote for. So they empowered Hamas and put Hamas there for the people to vote for. What happened when Arafat got assassinated, which was all set up by the Israelis, they basically kept him in a bunker and he ended up dying of, I think he was poisoned, Arafat, but it was definitely a Mossad operation. They killed him. And the place was in such turmoil at that stage, and there was no way for his brother to take over, so there was elections. And there was Fatah, which is very, very sympathetic to the Israeli cause, and there was Hamas, which was quite against the Israeli cause. And the situation in Gaza at the time, I mean, you had people like Rachel Corrie had just been killed. She'd been knocked down by an Israeli bulldozer. There were settlements going full on in Gaza. If it had continued from that point, there probably would be no Gaza now. It would have all been taken over by Israeli settlements. So the only real option that people had to stop the settlements and to stop the checkpoints and to stop everything that's going on in West Bank was to vote for Hamas and not to vote for Fatah, because obviously Yasser Arafat's kin, his brother, was not going to take over. There was going to be a president who was an Israeli sympathizer, which would have meant the continuation of the settlements and all of the hardship they were going through. So they voted for Hamas. And as soon as Hamas got into power, they cancelled elections. And what happened as well, we're told that Hamas seized power by a violent coup in Gaza. This is not true. The people voted for Hamas, but Fatah refused to relinquish power, and Hamas were forced to resort to violence in order to oust them from office. They tried to hold office through violence, Fatah. And the Israeli guards were standing all around in the corner. They let it all happen. They let the place turn into a kind of a civil war situation in Gaza in order to remove Fatah, so they could paint it as a violent takeover, the whole thing. And it gave them the excuse they needed to put the wall around the country. I think the whole thing has been a setup. I mean, they empowered Hamas right from the start. And the rockets that Hamas sends over only serve Israeli interests. They don't serve the people in Gaza. When there's probably a lot of members of Hamas who are legitimate freedom fighters, members of the Palestinian cause who really do want to see freedom. And Hamas is in many ways a bona fide resistance movement. But I think there are also elements in there that are very controlled, which ensure that the rockets keep going over to Israel to give Israel the excuse it needs to eventually just come and stomp on Gaza Strip while crying victim. I think the whole thing's been set up.
Yeah, once again we see an excuse, and it's basically like when we see the different G20 meetings and the different summits where we have provocateurs that are actually turn out to be police provocateurs that, you know, they give the excuse for the police state, they give the excuse for these rockets to keep coming, and that's what I do believe we're seeing here. Now, it seems to me, I just wanted to throw out one quick programming note. Sometimes when we've had shows on Gaza, we've done about 3 or 4 of them in the last 2 weeks, it seems that our stream goes down, or it kind of gets messed with. And just looking at the stats on the output right now, it does look like a little bit of our effect of our live output stream is a little wonky. So if anyone's tuning in live and they're getting a little bit of problems, all of this is being recorded on a separate stream, and it'll all be uploaded in complete high def HD to YouTube immediately after this, and then it'll be edited over what you guys are watching now. So anything that's problems with the live stream will all be fixed up within about 20 minutes of the show. And it's actually a common thing that happens when we have hard-hitting topics. You know, you could do a show about makeup and Barbie dolls and no one really cares, and you could run perfectly fine. But as soon as you start talking about real issues, Zionists, the Gaza Strip, any of the 9/11 major documentation shows, and this is exactly what we see is the powers that be, or you know, the controlling hand of the media, basically keeping its tight lock on even the alternative media through this chicanery. But besides all that, I just wanted to keep on a little bit more of the Gaza, even though I know that Max has an abundance of information on many different topics and lots of research over the years. So in Gaza right now, it seems that what I'm seeing in my newspapers locally and what I'm seeing on different TV shows such as CNN is you'll see a title, Hamas bombs Israel, or Hamas attacks, and it shows a picture of what looks to be like an airstrike or some giant massive rocket. So they're actually showing what Israel just did to Palestine and then labeling it the opposite. So we're seeing some media fakery or chicanery in the media. This is something that you're probably seeing as well. Can you speak on that?
Look, that's the level of spin in this operation has been phenomenal, and that's exactly what you're seeing. We're seeing major news networks showing damage in Gaza and claiming it is damage in Israel that's being done from Hamas rockets, which is completely and utterly absurd. You know, it's the spin is amazing, and even the way they word the headlines. There was one I was talking to Henrik the other day, and one of the headlines was Israel resumes shelling. Israel resumes shelling Gaza while Hamas rejects humanitarian ceasefire. Okay? So the way they've worded that, Hamas rejects humanitarian ceasefire, Israel resumes shelling. It's just like business as usual. We're just resuming production now, you know. It should be like Israel resumes its vicious terror assault against Gazan refugees while Hamas calls for truce, because that's what's happening. Hamas is rejecting the ceasefire because it wants a truce. The ceasefire is, the terms that Israel's offering is, look, we've carpet bombed your whole place, turned it to rubble, created tens of thousands of victims. We'll cease fire if you hand over your weapons and stop fighting back, at which point we will leave you locked in this prison and you can die slowly. That is the ceasefire terms. What Hamas is saying is, we want to stop firing altogether and we want you to stop the blockade, stop the siege, let us live with dignity like normal people. And Israel's saying no. Either you stop fighting back or we'll kill you quickly, or you can stop fighting back and we'll let you die slowly. That's the ceasefire terms that they're offering. And it's all been spun by the media. The media is really playing this one to the hilt. Even when you see people that are doing humanitarian marches, pro-Israeli or pro-Palestine marches for Israel to stop the bombing, these are being presented on television as pro-Hamas supporters marching through the capital city, pro-Hamas rallies, you know. So Hamas is a terrorist organization, remember, and these are all pro-Hamas. Look at all these terrorists we've got in our country. This is the way it's kind of been presented, you know. The media spin has been phenomenal on this, like nothing I've ever seen. And a lot of people, unfortunately, just lapping it up.
The one good thing that I'm seeing on the awakening side of it is when I go through my Facebook list of let's say maybe 900 people, I'm noticing that there is post after post after post about Gaza. Many people have their profiles on a red out, you know, it's to show solidarity with Gaza. There is a large amount of people awakening to it. There is a mass quantity of the alternative media that's going to it. But the main media and the mainstream media and the corporate media seems to be going straight down the line of this shouldn't be happening to Israel. This is just them protecting themselves. They've killed 1,400 people at least to about 30 or 40, and that's just them protecting themselves. Israel's trying to, you know, basically protect its people, they're saying, but they're trying to say that Hamas is just trying to protect its rockets, and that's why they validate dropping bombs on schools, on hospitals. I was just watching a video before we went on air, and I downloaded it from YouTube because it'll be gone soon, where you see an ambulance pull up and all the men get out and they're rushing really quick to get out and help the people who have already been rocketed, and of course their ambulance gets hit by a rocket. And the chaos ensues. It's crazy. The people who are trying to help people are even being attacked. I can't believe it as a viewer. It infuriates me, and I understand why you've been quite wound up on these shows, and the fury is coming through, and it's got to stop.
Well, look, there is no battle against Hamas waging in Gaza Strip. People have to understand this. There is no battle against Hamas. What's going on is you've got a very, very strong military force that has gone into Gaza Strip and they are slaughtering civilians. That's what's happening. They are randomly shelling buildings. They are doing so much damage. There's one video you can see where there's one complete suburb is reduced to rubble in 1 hour. These are buildings with people living in them. These are whole suburbs that are just reduced to piles of rubble. Looks like a scene from the end of the world. There's a reporter, Noor Harazin, on Facebook. You can find her. You'll find it in my favorites on the Crow House YouTube channel. You'll find it actually on my homepage. You'll find a video from Noor, a report from Live in Gaza, what they're actually doing to these places. It's just random shelling. They're targeting so many civilians, it's ridiculous. All that there is in Gaza is civilians. There is no military force. There are no military targets in Gaza. Anywhere they happen to fire a rocket from is an area where there are civilians, because there are 1.8 million people packed in an area 25 miles long, 4.5 to 5 miles wide, and that's it. That's Gaza Strip. They've got a wall around them. When they're telling them to leave their homes and be safe, there's nowhere for them to go. There's a 50-foot wall around the entire country. And when they're going out into the areas that Israel is telling them are safe, then they're dropping gas bombs. They're dropping gas bombs on the hospital. They're saying that the death toll is 1,400 or 1,500 people. I would suggest it's far, far higher than that. The death toll would be well into the tens of thousands by now. They're just not telling us. There's whole suburbs where there are people buried under rubble. The death toll is just the official death toll. These are the bodies they picked up from the street or whatever. What about the tens of thousands of people that are buried under rubble in all of these suburbs that Israel is just marching through and turning to dust? Random shelling of buildings, not even asking people to get out of the buildings, just walking into a town, cruising into a town with a tank and just shelling every building in the district. That's what they're doing. And Gaza's about to go dark if it hasn't gone dark already. They're about to run out completely of all diesel. There'll be no mobile phone reception. The only water that they're getting at the moment is from desalination plants. Israel bombed the last power station yesterday, I think. So there's not going to be any electricity. I don't know whether the desalination plants will work. You're going to have people drinking contaminated water out of puddles. There's bodies and death everywhere. Whole suburbs reduced to rubble. If we don't get people in there soon, there will be no survivors from Gaza Strip. And there was never the intention for there to be any survivors when Israel went in. This has been a deliberate genocide right from the very beginning. You don't take 60,000 troops and a column of tanks into a walled-in refugee camp because you want to clean up a few tunnels. You don't carpet bomb Gaza the way they have. You don't drop thousands of tons of ordnance on Gaza and take in dime ammunition and flèche bombs and white phosphorus if you want to clean out a few tunnels. This is genocide. And what scares me about it is the mentality of the soldiers that are doing this, because the weapons that they're using are weapons of nightmares. They're using them against a population, a defenseless population of civilians, of mainly children. Over half the population in Gaza is children, and people need to pay attention to this, because this is legalizing genocide. It's legitimizing using weapons of death and torture and horror against children is a matter of self-defense. It's ridiculous that Israel is being allowed to get away with this massive war crime, and it's ridiculous that our governments are supporting it. Every government that hasn't spoken out about this already is complicit in this war crime. Every government that is supporting Israel's incursion into Gaza is complicit in war crimes. Each one of these politicians needs to be removed. Stephen Harper, he's a criminal. He's a war criminal simply by supporting this war crime. Same as the Prime Minister of my country, Tony Abbott. He's a war criminal simply by supporting this war crime. So is Obama. America is simply, they're supplying them with more weapons. They're supplying them with more ammunition. And Israel has just called up more troops. That's why they're having this 72-hour ceasefire. They're calling up more troops.
To reload.
So, yeah, there's going to be like something like 85,000 troops going into Gaza to clean up. I mean, this is a civilian population, unarmed civilian population. And this is absolute genocide right from the very beginning. It always has been. And if we don't stand up against this, then the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. This is a huge opportunity for mankind to wake up, and we sure as hell better do it. Because if we don't, then we're going to be in for some big trouble, because this will be coming to a town near you. You've just approved of it by not doing anything about it, by not saying something about it, by not standing up about it. You're approving of this, and that means it will be coming to you. It's a scary thing.
It's absolute vital information that we're hearing right now. Listening to you talk about this and how it is affecting people, it's literally turning my stomach with the humanity that's being lost right now. It's outrageous. We're talking to Max Igan. We're going to take a quick 90-second break as we're past the halfway point. We'll be right back with more Truth Talk.
Less than 3% of you people read books, because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. Television is not the truth. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds.
Broadcasting live on network radio.
So turn off your television sets, turn them off now, turn them off and leave them off.
Proposal here, West Memphis Suicide, and you're listening to fellow dirtbags, Paul and Chance, sticking it to the man on the hardest hitting show, Truth Talk.
Alright, we're back live. This is episode 70 of Truth Talk on NBC. We're joined by our very special guest, Max Igan, and we've been talking everything Gaza Strip and what is going on with the brutal massacre and genocide at the hands of the Zionist Israelis. Max, we're so glad to have you here. I just wanted to take a brief moment to tell everyone your website is thecrowhouse.com, correct?
That's correct.
Would this be the best place to find your work and your material, or where would you direct people?
Yeah, you'll find it all on the Crow House. That's where you'll find links to everywhere else. I mean, I've got Facebook pages as well and YouTube channels, but it all links through thecrowhouse.com.
Awesome. Now, there's just so much of this story. What do you think is the biggest part of this story? Is it the wall? Is it the fact that this is a jail? Is it that it's been happening for 60 years? Or is it just that it's escalating to the brink point now? Or what is the major story that that maybe we're either missing or we're not being pointed out? What do you think is the most important part of this whole story here in Gaza?
Well, the fact that it's legitimizing genocide. I mean, this isn't some rogue government somewhere. This isn't, well, it is a rogue government, but it isn't some totalitarian regime in South Africa or somewhere in Panama or, We hear about all of these massacres all the time. We hear about, Idi Amin doing these things. We hear about Saddam Hussein. All these people are always painted as these brutal terrorist regimes that do these terrible things. And here we have Israel, a major world power, one of, apparently the most respected nations on earth, a power that receives foreign aid from every country on earth, just about, with nuclear weapons. I mean, a member of G8. And here it is carrying out a wholesale genocide against the Palestinian people. It's used a false flag to do it. I mean, the kidnap of these 3 youths pales into insignificance with the damage that they've done in response to it. And it wasn't even anybody in Gaza who kidnapped those 3 youths. They just blamed it on Hamas. And it's been proven that it wasn't Hamas who kidnapped them. And not only that, but the kidnappers were speaking Hebrew. And not only that, but they knew that they were dead an hour after they got kidnapped. So there was no reason to have spent 10 days whipping up this racial frenzy and then going in and exterminating 1.8 million people. And I suspect that that's what this will end up being. You know, if the world doesn't step in and stop it, Israel will keep going until it has killed every single person in Gaza Strip. That was its goal right from the start. I mean, you've just got to look at it. You know, and what it spells for the earth is legitimized genocide. That's the thing. Our governments are going along with this, and it's not acceptable for us to allow this to happen. You know, it's not just some rogue nation. Like I said, this is a major G8 nation, and it's been supported by other major G8 nations. Even though the world's up in arms, the world's screaming out about it, making all sorts of noise. You know, our governments aren't. Our governments are just allowing this to happen, and that's not fair. That's not good. It's not acceptable. We need to do something about that. We need to do it in a peaceful way. We can't have revolution or violence, but we need to pay attention to what this is and what's going on. We need to really step into ourselves and step into our own power and hold these people accountable for their actions. But you know, we've got to stand up and do that. That's the problem. Is a lot of people are just too frightened to stand up and do anything about it. You know, stand up and make a noise, stand up and say anything, and they need to. Like I said, we've got this action at the moment where everybody's contacting the Egyptian embassies as much as we can, contacting our politicians, contacting our governments, letting them know that we do view this as a war crime and we do intend to hold them accountable. And we do want Egypt to open Rafah border so we can get humanitarian aid in. You know, and if they won't allow us to do this, then it just confirms that this is a planned and well-executed genocide and has been right from the start. And the more they refuse us, the more noise we can make and the more hope we have of seeing survivors from Gaza Strip.
Now, I know that when people speak out against this and when they try and bring about the fact that maybe the Israeli government and the Israeli defense forces, that's kind of an oxymoron there. I don't believe they're defense forces at all. When people try and stand up to this, they are immediately labeled anti-Semitic. You're a Nazi. You're someone who is a hater. You're a racist. This is exactly what they're trying to paint the picture of. So it's almost like there's a built-in defense mechanism because of what happened in the Holocaust, and because they've been painted as the victim here. It almost doesn't matter what Israel does right now. They are basically not only figuratively but literally getting away with bloody murder. And it's sad to say that when you can't speak up against this, what kind of world are we living in? Where are our children going to end up one day if when you are murdering children in cold blood and you speak out against it, you're an anti-Semite or you're a racist? It's maddening. It's absolutely appalling being a parent myself. I just hope that either this group of activists could show up, or humanitarian efforts, or for the first time ever, maybe the United Nations do something useful and step in. Something has to be done. Millions of people spoke out about the atrocities of the Berlin Wall when that was running through the middle of Germany, but it's like people don't even know that there's a Jewish version of this that's twice as high and 3 times as long, and is segregating the people of Gaza and literally imprisoning them. It's sickening.
Well, yeah, and it's not just Gaza. I mean, there's a wall around West Bank. There's a wall around Jerusalem as well in the West Bank. So it's not just Gaza. All of these people are segregated. It's a very, very brutal apartheid system that is in place there in Israel. But the thing is, I mean, hiding behind the cloak of anti-Semitism, really, I think they've really blown it with this. I don't think that's going to work anymore, because this is a blatant war crime, and you can't say that it isn't. I mean, it's an undeniable war crime. Just the bombing of hospitals, the bombing of ambulances. We've all got it on video now. We've seen it. They can say what they want about Hamas using people as human shields. It doesn't cut it. And you can't hide these war crimes behind the cloak of anti-Semitism anymore. I think that people are realizing that when you look at the crimes of the Israeli government and you speak out against them, anti-Semitism is really the only comeback they have to stop you talking about them, and it's just not working anymore. People are sick of it. It doesn't work. It obviously isn't the reason you're speaking out against Israel. if you look at the actions of the Israeli government in this latest incursion into Gaza, it's exposed itself as being a very, very brutal and criminal government so much to the world that this action alone could bring about eventually the implosion of the state of Israel via the actions of its own government. So looking at that and bearing that in mind, it would appear that the Israeli government, the current Israeli administration, is perhaps far more anti-Semitic than anyone who may choose to criticize that administration, simply because its own actions may eventually bring about the implosion of the very state itself. So you've got to really draw the line when you want to use that as something to hold you back from speaking out against this. I mean, I won't allow people to accuse me of being anti-Semitic simply because I'm speaking out about a war crime. I think it's been well constructed this way so that this administration is able to get away with what it does and hide behind that cloak. But I think they've blown it with this. I really do.
These are the exact same people who are calling us racist about standing up for Gaza. These are the same people that when Obama took office and when we had mentioned that this Nobel Peace Prize winner who's funding these wars and who has got in numerous illegal wars, as soon as you criticize him, you're automatically a racist. So this is the same play, the same ploy. They just keep passing the buck down. Now, an hour goes by so fast here on these shows. We only have you for about 15 more minutes of our hour. Could I just get a couple brief comments, maybe just simple summaries of a few other world events that are going around? And Gaza is literally stomach-turning what's happening there. Do you have any comments on what we're seeing just slightly further around the world in the Ukraine and the destabilization and what's going on with the open attack on Russia?
Look, it's all part of the same destabilization process. I mean, a lot of that is theatre. I don't think we're going to have a major confrontation with Russia. You're more likely to see a major confrontation come out of what's happening in Gaza if they could just get the Arabs to come to the party, but the Arabs won't. But I mean, a lot of what we've seen in Ukraine is all. I mean, it's all about depopulation, theatres of war. They just want to kill as many people as possible. They don't care where they do it. As many theatres of conflict as they can create. They're quite happy to do so, as long as they can send other people's children off to die, send other people's children off to kill other people's children. Everybody who has never met everybody else is all killing everybody else. You know what I mean? This is just what they want. This is how the depopulation plan goes. But with a lot of what we've seen in Ukraine, I think it has all set this up for this big ethnic cleanse of Gaza. I think it's all related. I really do. Because they're getting away with the most brutal form of warfare here with a walled-in population. I think this is why the plane got shot down over Ukraine. It's why the plane went down over Africa. I think a lot of this is all distraction to keep you away from Gaza. I think the whole Arab Spring, the whole destabilization of the whole Arab world around there, the fall of Libya, the destabilization of Egypt, everything that's gone on, I think has all been leading to this point. And they're trying to kickstart World War III any way they can. Any way they can. You know, they're pushing and prodding at Russia at the moment. They're really pushing and prodding at the Arab world. And what they've done in Gaza, this was done in Ramadan. This is the holy month of fasting. This is the big month for Muslims. And they took out the power station and did an absolutely brutal bombing raid, a massive massacre on one day, which was actually the Eid, which was actually like the equivalent of the Muslim Christmas Day. They did one of the worst massacres of all in Gaza. So it's really, really well orchestrated to try and bring about conflict any way they can. But I don't think we'll go to war with Russia. I think a lot of that is posturing. I really do. I think it's just a distraction. It's all theatre. Keep people's eyes off this huge ethnic cleansing. There's also been billions and billions of dollars of oil found just off the coast of Gaza, oil and natural gas. So that's another reason why Egypt wants to land so desperately. And I would suggest that's another reason why, or why Israel wants to land so desperately. And it's another reason why Egypt has kept the border closed, because part of those gas fields and oil fields are in Egypt's maritime boundaries. So they'll get some of the slice of the pie there. I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, but I think it's all connected, brother. I really do. All the world is a stage, and what they want at the moment more than anything is conflict and depopulation in any way they can get it. And that's what we're seeing.
Well, that was my next written down point would be the world economic collapse that we see on the brink. It seems like these events that are happening simultaneously as we're seeing the U.S. dollar unseating itself from the world currency, as we see the BRICS nations come about this. Like you mentioned, the plane was shot down on the same day as some major raids into Gaza. It seems like you're seeing a little bit of destabilization theater of what the left hand's doing while you're missing what the right hand's coming and doing. I know that a lot of people are actually saying that this is fulfilling prophecies and that this may be an end time scenario. This is why some people are just sitting still and think, well, now this is fine that this is happening. We're bringing on the second coming. I'm not sure what your religious affiliation is, but I do see this type of stuff all around the internet, and it's absolutely mind-blowing what's happening, the state of the world, and it's incredible that we're living in this time right now. It's not like we're talking about some faraway, distant future. We're actually living in this right now. It's a fascinating and amazing time to be alive. Now, I would hate to leave the listeners and leave everyone on such an absolute negative note with everything that we've been talking about, from the murder of these children to just the dollar collapse and everything that's happening. I would love to have a positive note. Could we get some of that classic Max Igan, the awakening, that positive message that a lot of your work has reflected, and just the enlightened consciousness of how we are all actually one. We're all together. We could beat this simply by realizing that we're not divided, and we should actually be treating each other as brothers and sisters. Can we get just a very positive note to wrap things up with as a little final comment from you, Max?
Well, it's hard to put a positive slant on all this, but ultimately, I mean, that is the solution. The solution is for us to change our perspective. That's how we deal with everything, because ultimately all of these problems are being brought about just by people. As I was saying before, the mentality of the soldiers that are in there doing this, they're doing this because they don't understand themselves. They don't understand what reality is. They don't understand what their connection to other people and their connection to reality is. I base a lot of my shows on this, how your body is simply a vessel that you're using to experience this, and you're ultimately just a frequency of consciousness. And really, I mean, if you look at it that way, and you look at how your body works, and you look at, you start understanding that your consciousness isn't local to your body, it exists in the surrounding field, and you're literally downloading a frequency of that consciousness from that field into this vessel so you can experience reality from that perspective. You start to realize that there's only really one of us here. And people will look at this and they'll think, well, if that's the case, then what's happening in Gaza is okay. It's happening because it's supposed to happen. And yeah, it is. It's supposed to happen so that you wake up to yourself and realize that you have the power to stop this if you change your perspective and change the way you interact with the world around you. Put down the fear. And if you don't, if you choose not to, and you allow these atrocities to appear live on TV and live on the screen, and these babies with their heads blown off and all the stuff that we're seeing out of this, if you don't do anything about it, if you don't choose to step into your power, well, it'll get a little worse next time. It'll come closer and closer and closer to you until you decide to make a difference by changing your perspective. That's what all this happens for. That's why every problem that we face can be changed and solved and healed by us changing our inner perspective, us changing the way we approach the world, us changing our perspective of who and what we are. That's what it all comes down to. If we really did understand ourselves and understand what our body is and what we are, the fact that we're an energetic being even more than we are a biological being, and that we're all in this together, we're all these energy beings, and there has to be this level of extreme violence and extreme love in order for it to all make sense. You've got to have the choice to go wrong in order to go right. But how wrong are we going to let it go before we choose to make it right? And that's what this is. That's what all these things are. It always is, and it'll just get worse until we choose to make that choice. So that's what this is. This is an opportunity for us to do that. And it's also showing us that if we don't choose to do that, well, this is where it's going to go. So we've got to make that decision. We've got to make it now. It is the most significant event we've seen since 9/11. It really is. It's moved the goalpost. It's taken things to another level. But ultimately, it's an opportunity. And the beautiful people in Palestine and in Gaza, and they are beautiful, beautiful, gentle, empowering people. These people are sacrificing themselves for us in order to make a difference so that we wake up. I think we should choose to do so.
Max, I don't even know how to thank you. You've been just a terrific guest, and not only that, but all the work that I've seen you do, all the work that you continue to do, it's just absolutely phenomenal to know that there's people, even on the other side of the world, right now in the future, to me, who are just fighting for humanity. And I thank you for everything that you're doing, and it's just been a pleasure to have you on our show.
Well, thank you for having me on, brother. Thanks for listening. Thanks for helping to get the word out. You know, we can make a difference if we choose to, but we've got to choose to. And we don't need any violence with any of this. All we need to do is to rediscover ourselves. That's what this is all about. And like I said, it's just going to keep coming at us until we choose to do so. So, yeah, we should. It's good. We have an opportunity here. Let's not squander it, you know.
That's right.
But yeah, thanks for having me on, brother.
No problem. The best place to check out Max's work is thecrowhouse.com. You can look him up on YouTube as well. We're live every day from the week at webookyourshow.com. There's all the links for our shows that we air daily. There's a different show every day, and Truth Talk will be back very soon. We're going to pick up the pace, and we have a couple more outstanding guests coming on, and we're going to look at this information, and we're going to continue to follow what is happening in Gaza. And once again, we would just like to thank Max for all his work. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. This has been another episode of Truth Talk, and we will talk to you all again. Good night, everybody.
You're watching Network Radio. Live from the Media Broadcasting Center.